Good morning, everyone. We're going to get kicked off. We'll still perhaps have some stragglers join in a little bit later. My name is Donald MacKay. I'm the CEO of MacKay Global Trade Advisors, and I'm joined today by Arista, one of our analysts. And thank you for attending the session this morning. We're going to dive right in. And so the reason we've asked you to join this meeting is to talk about a really important issue around the customs duties on sugar. And so just to give a little bit of background to anyone who may not be familiar with it, unlike almost all other duties besides wheat, the duty on sugar is not investigated every time a change needs to occur. What happens is when the sugar price globally drops below a reference price, which is based in dollars, for 20 days, it will automatically trigger a duty increase, and vice versa. When it sits above that level for 20 days, it should automatically trigger a decrease. And the reason these duties work in this way is because these are sensitive and government has determined strategic agricultural products. We want to make sure that the farmers plant when they need to plant. And so when the trigger is hit, the change should be automatic. There've been a number of court cases on this. And at the end of all of these cases, the agreed period that it should take at most is 30 days from the trigger. And in fact, I'm going to hand over to Arista in just a moment. Arista will walk you through the fact that a trigger was recently missed. The duties were meant to have gone up. They didn't. The duties were then meant to go back to zero, but they never went up. And so they're still at zero. And tomorrow, there's a fairly substantial increase that is due. And when these triggers are missed, because sugar tends to move in such enormous values, the over or underpayment of duties can be quite severe. And what we're trying to get to with the product that we've developed and that we want to tell you about is we want to get to a point where this moves back to where it was before, which is very predictable, so that everyone knows what is going to happen, and we remove all of the uncertainty and hence the very large amount of risk that follows either trading in sugar or growing sugar. So I'm going to hand over to Arista now, who really came up with this idea, built the product around this idea, and did all of the calculations in the background, which he will walk you through. So Arista, over to you.
Thank you, Donald, and good morning, everyone. So let me take you quickly through the process of implementation. So on day one, a duty trigger is hit. It then takes ITAC approximately 9 days on average through the decade we analyzed to publish their minutes. Thereafter, as Donald said, it should only take 30 days to implementation. However, the average days are now 68 days. But there was one that has the longest wait for 250 days before the duty change was implemented, which is quite a long time. And there's also missed duties in that period, which is also a large contributor to the cost of delay. So in the Grain SA versus Minister of Finance, it stated that it should only take 1 month for implementation of a duty increase or decrease, just to avoid the players in the market to abuse the situation. So it was already implemented in a court case and agreed upon that it should only take 1 month. But why is there excuses that it shouldn't take 1 month? So on average days through the decade from 2014 to 2023, from the duty trigger to SARS implementation, you can see that the days to implementation has increased over the years, which is quite significant, and the cost of delay is tremendous. So if we just take the cost of delays in the last decade, 970 million was underpaid to SARS, where 486 million was overpaid to the industry, which tally up to 1.5 million or billion rands, which is it's so large, like extremely, and that's the cost of the delay. So there's no investigation needed to implement the duty, so there's no excuse why the delay is taking so long. So if we just see the delay, there's also another concept, which is the missed triggers on top of the cost of delay. So the missed triggers is now accumulating to 10 missed triggers, which we, as discussed, is quite a easy calculation to do and doesn't need any investigation. As you can see, the green indicates downward missed triggers. The X is where it actually was implemented with the ITAC trigger. And then also an upward missed trigger is indicated with the red. However, there's one trigger that's not on here that is now a missed trigger. On 26 July 2023, there was a missed trigger for a duty increase to 15 cents per kilogram. This cost of not implementing this change has been foregone revenue of 156 million rand, which is significant. So the missed triggers accumulate in the last decade to 709 million that was underpaid and 184 million that was overpaid just because they missed these triggers. So why are these triggers missed? ITAC relies on being notified by the industry, either if it's a duty increase or decrease. So if they don't get notified, they don't know there was a trigger. So there's a new duty approximately for 1 rand per kilogram approaching tomorrow. And it should be implemented by the end of Feb. If it's not implemented by the end of Feb, each day of this delay will cost SARS 1 million rand per day if it's not implemented by the end of Feb, which is, it tally up to 34 or approximately 30 million, 31 million at the end of each month that surpasses. So what is our solution? We do the calculations. We will notify ITAC, SARS, and the ministers. We would publish these changes as they occur with every variable and every supporting documentation that we have to calculate these duties. With this, we have a tool that comes with it. Just to quickly go through the tool, we have at a glance, history, and the sugar stats. So if we start from the left-hand corner, you can see the current duty is at the moment 0 rand. The exchange rate updates each day, so then you know when the duty is triggered. And you can also use these variables to calculate the duty. And then you also have the daily dollar-based reference price. On the right-hand corner, you would see the missed trigger, which was the 26 July as mentioned, and the days that surpassed was 180 days, which is also significant for not a duty implementation, which it should increase from 0 rand per kilogram to 15 cents per kilogram. Just underneath it, you would see there's a line graph, which says that the duty would be implemented and the days into a potential duty change cycle, which it counts up to the 20 consecutive days that the duty should be up or down. Underneath that table, you would see the ITAC trigger, the duty increase or decrease, which it were changed to, and then also the minute number. These minutes, that is like the awaiting the 16 May, you can click on it, and then it would open up a page where you can get all the variables and the calculations just for your reference to also check if you want to see what variables we use in the calculation. On the left-hand side, you can have the graph. It also says the 20-day moving average price. It also updates every day. And then you can see on the next label, there's a closing day price also. So each closing day, if it updates it, the 20-day moving average moves on 20 days and a new average is calculated for that day. If we then go to history, you would see the two graphs at the top you've already seen in the presentation. The one on the left is all the sugar duty triggers, and the one on the right is the average days from duty trigger to SARS implementation. However, the table at the bottom, I think is quite significant one. It would tell you all the things you need to know for each trigger. So the expected trigger, the ITAC trigger with its expected trigger, how many days has surpassed, the ITAC trigger when it was published, the ITAC minute, the implementation, duties, all of that, as well as the cost of late implementation, and also the cost of a missed sugar. So these delays don't only require enormous costs for importers, producers, and SARS. So all these entities need to work together just to help make the cost of delay quite smaller and have the procedure correct. With these tools, you get the sugar stats. You can get the imports and exports of all sugar for a period from 2010 up to the most recent one we have for November 2023. So these are all the tools that we have. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Arista. I just perhaps want to add a few things to what you said. Would you mind terribly much just going back a few slides to the chart that shows the time spent with ITAC and the ministers? That one. So what you see here, we've had many meetings with ITAC about this. We've been trying for a very long time to just get this problem solved. You'll see if you look at this chart, there's the thin blue line at the bottom and the big sort of orange block at the top of these charts. And that indicates the amount of time being spent respectively at ITAC versus with the ministers. The emphasis in this presentation was on duties needing to go up, and that is simply because the global sugar price has been dropping, and so the duty should have moved up. But of course, the same thing applies in the other direction. And we see here that the bulk of the time spent on this is with the ministers. And when you look at this chart, this is telling you that the trigger was caught. A change eventually occurred, and we've tried to understand where the delay occurs. So you'll see the bulk of the delay sits on the minister's side. There are some instances where ITAC takes longer than they should, but usually that's where the problem is. What we have to do here is we've got to find a way to get these duty changes triggering at the right times so that this predictability comes back. So if you look at the beginning, if you go back to 2014, you will see that we're very close to the target range of 30 days. So instead of 4 weeks, it was 5 weeks in 2014. And you'll see how it's risen. In Arista's most recent example, they've simply completely missed the trigger and just didn't implement it. So it's not so much that they caught it and took long to implement. They simply missed the trigger. And you've seen the cost implications of missing those triggers. So from a SARS perspective, SARS has been deprived. Of course, the protection that is meant to be afforded to the domestic producers has been eroded. But on the other side of this is this uncertainty around what is going to happen. The same thing occurs in the other direction, which is when the sugar price rises and the duty should come down, they don't. And that means the consumer ends up paying considerably more for their product. It means every product that has sugar as a raw material is more expensive than it should be. And so the implications in both directions are severe. And we're trying to get to a point where working with the industry, working with SARS, with ITAC, etc., we can bring this to a point where this problem gets eliminated and we bring some measure of predictability back to the process. Do we have any questions? Nico? You might be muted. You are.
Good morning, Donald, and thanks to Arista for the presentation. Just a quick one. I understand that you've been having these engagements with ITAC, where perhaps, as you say, the bulk of the problem does not reside. In fact, it resides with the minister's office. The question is, have you had the engagements with the minister? And what is his office saying about this? Is an issue of delays in administration, for example? with reports taking longer than they're supposed to be in terms of being processed? What are the issues there? Because I think if we can resolve the issues there, that can go some way in really dealing with the problem.
Yeah, so we've spoken to people inside of DTIC. We have not yet been able to secure a meeting with the minister, and no one in DTIC really wants to talk about where the problem is. We've also had a conversation with National Treasury on their side, with equally kind of little interest in making any sort of commitment. So there appear to be two different problems here, Nico. The one is we're waiting for, ITAC is waiting for industry to notify them. Now, we're not entirely sure why ITAC doesn't do the calculations themselves and identify the triggers. And they haven't been terribly forthcoming with why that is not happening automatically. But it very clearly is not happening automatically, which is why so many are missed. The other side of it is what causes the delay. Well, it does appear when the notification arrives, ITAC does appear to move fairly quickly. So the reason we're talking to ITAC to help fix this as well is for the first problem. The second problem is definitely with the Minister of Trade predominantly, but the Minister of Finance is definitely not innocent here. We have a number of cases where the Minister of Finance has been the cause of the problem. Now, regarding the delays, when a trigger has been hit and everything's been done properly by ITAC, this seems to be part of a much bigger problem. And the much bigger problem we have is that when decisions relating to duty changes arrive with the Minister of Trade, they all take very, very long. So I shall give you a quick example. A tariff decision, a duty increase or reduction, should take 6 months from the date the initiation gazette is published to when a final decision is taken and implemented. And for the longest time, that in fact happened fairly consistently around the 6-month mark. That has changed fairly dramatically. So we're now at a point where the average period of any tariff investigation will run to about 25 months, and it's no longer uncommon for decisions to run to 4 years and longer. So there's a much bigger problem, and we think a part of that problem is that there's a lack of understanding of what the role is meant to be. And so in some cases, the minister is almost re-investigating what ITAC has done, which is, of course, problematic. So there doesn't appear to be a kind of a healthy relationship of trusting what is being received. So we've now got two kind of different problems here. And we're struggling. I won't lie to you. We are struggling to get any kind of traction with the minister to get a commitment on how to change this. And we built the tool because the one thing that does happen is we think the pressure needs to be applied not only from us. I mean, we're in the private sector, but we think other bodies. If you take SARS, for example, I think SARS has an important role to play here. If a delay is costing SARS R1 million a day, and you don't have to do any complicated audit or anything else to secure that money, that would appear to be literally the lowest of all low-hanging fruit. Is that helpful at all, Nico?
Very helpful, Donald. Thanks. Obviously, I mean, I will not be commenting much on the issues around the delay in terms of the implementation itself, but I think you make a good point around, the cost or the revenue forgone really as a result of this. Certainly, I would imagine that there should be interest government-wide in terms of looking at this issue. But I think let me just stop there for now. And allow other colleagues. Maybe before I do that, Donald, just one more question. So, does the Sugar Association inform ITAC in terms of the changes? Where does ITAC get this information?
Yes, from SASA, the Sugar Association does the notification.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Let me just perhaps add to what you said. So the offer we've made to ITAC, and the same offer is currently being extended to SARS. For governments, government officials, Treasury, anyone else who wants it, we will give our software to them free of charge. So we're not asking government to pay for any of this. What we are saying is that there are two problems you have to address. The one is you cannot rely on the industry to do this because, and I'm not suggesting there's anyone behaving poorly within the industry, but the industry has an incentive to notify ITAC when duties need to go up, but they don't have quite the same incentive when it has to go down. But it's important that the duties are not there longer than they should be, because there is a price paid by the downstream industry who faces competition from products which have sugar in and are not subject to the duties. And if you look at the change that is due tomorrow, that should be taking the duty up to just over R1 per kilogram. But R1 per kilogram is R1 million a day in duties. So, it's a significant amount of money. If you've got that R1 there longer than it should be, it also means every manufacturer using sugar in their product is carrying the cost of that extra burden and losing market share to imported products. So, what we're trying to get to is we're not so much concerned about, I mean, SARS would be concerned about collecting the money. That's a slightly different issue. But from our perspective, we're trying to get the system to work properly. That's the objective we have. So that we get back to a point where we were a decade ago, where this was a very predictable system for everyone. So the farmers could bank on what was going to happen. The manufacturers could, everyone could do their planning. And now we've ended up with the very opposite. But yeah. Anyone else? Dr. Victor, perhaps just a practical question to you, if you don't mind. Like I said, we're very happy. We're concerned about this sort of thing. We're very happy to donate what we have to SARS. I mean, you guys can have it. It all runs online. We can set you up. And of course, if anyone's concerned that our calculations might be wrong, we're more than happy to put our own stuff under review. Anyone can go and check it. We're very happy with that. But I'm not sure, Victor, if I don't want to put you in an awkward position here, but I mean, from your perspective, do you have any comments? Is there a way forward that SARS would like to take this conversation? And by the way, if SARS is able to get everyone in a room, of course, we'll be there in a heartbeat, happy to talk to whoever in government wants to have a conversation with us. You are muted, Victor. Victor? No luck with Victor. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Victor, there you are. Hello? I think Victor's struggling with his microphone. Victor?
Can you hear me?
Very faintly.
Yeah, I'm sort of struggling with my system here. I couldn't hear you clearly. I don't know what's going on. My system is not working properly. Let me try and just get in. I didn't hear you clearly what you were saying.
Well, let me quickly repeat it. Can you hear me now, Victor?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, so I was saying we're sitting with, we're not entirely sure why. I mean, we're speculating why the problems are here. We need to fix the problem. I mean, the problem is a significant one and it has to be addressed. We understand the reluctance of the industry to ruffle feathers in this situation, but it does feel somewhat prejudicial to the domestic sugar producers who are already in a lot of trouble, that when they're entitled to duty protection, they're unable to secure it. And we can't be in a position, I mean, there've been a couple of court cases on this. We can't be in a position where the only way to get a duty change is to continuously approach the court to compel the relevant parties to do their work. We're trying to get to a point where this process works more smoothly. And we'd like to know if you have any thoughts on how we can move this process forward. If SARS wants to get a meeting together with the relevant stakeholders from ITAC and Treasury, etc., we'd of course be happy to join. If you need anything from us, we're happy to give it to you. But what would the next steps be from your perspective, if you have one?
Yeah, I think, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I think the next step, we have started, I've started this conversation internally with the leadership here. So at least we find a way to sort of indirectly engage with the DTIC at the higher level as well. But I do think that the next step it's leading more towards an engagement with not just yourself, but the industry as well, to see how best we can address this. I mean, it's a simple matter that should really be addressed without any lengthy meetings or any lengthy engagement, because there is not really much of a policy decision or any, extensive discussion that needs to happen for this to be implemented. It's really on the side of ITAC to do what's required, and also from the DTIC side. But I think from our side, the impact here for us, we look at it, it's a bit serious, especially when you look at the issues of duties, the overpayment by the industry, and also, what the revenue authority is losing as well, which is quite significant and sizable. Hence, this discussion internally has started, and we're engaging in terms of how we find the best way forward. We can't really resolve it exclusively ourselves outside of the DTIC and the minister. So I think that will be the next step, which I will engage with yourself, Donald, just to see how best we can mobilize a session with the industry or relevant stakeholders to find a better way forward on resolving this. I know I'd hope that by now we'll have had meetings, but there's been a lot of really disruption, especially on our engagement with the BRICS matters that are still going on. So a lot of our senior people have always been out on those sessions. But it's in the discussion, and it's already ongoing internally. And I'm hoping that at least very soon we'll be able to come together and find a way forward.
Excellent. Anyone else? Well, you guys have our details. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll be in touch shortly. If anyone requires a copy of the video presentation, anything like that, Arista will send it out to you if you need it. And of course, get in touch if you have any questions.